Welcome to this Training Together video on how to manage a funded project. We're going to look at the steps you need to take before you even begin filling in the application forms. Obviously that will vary depending on whether your project is a small repair to a listed church or a large community project that may require a couple of £1 million funding. The most important thing is that you don't allow the funding tail to wag the mission dog. In other words, make sure that you're doing what you feel called to do and then seek funding for it. Don't look at what funding's out there and then try and force your project into a shape to fit, because it won't work, and it's much better to discern what God's calling your church to do and then respond to that. So you've got an idea, now you need to start testing the idea. How do we do this? You need to seek advice. You will want to have a conversation maybe with an architect. Doesn't need to be your quinquennial inspection architect. You can choose another architect for this work if you feel that that would be better. For example, if you're using a conservation architect to look after your quinquennial, you may want to use somebody who is less conservation minded if you're intending to reorder the interior of your church. It's up to you. I would suggest you look for somebody you get on with, who seems to understand what you're thinking and who responds to you in a timely way. The other people you'll need to seek advice from is the DAC, the Diocesan Advisory Committee. This is a group of professionals who have been given the ability to give you permission for what you want to do to your church. It's a bit like planning permission for the interior of the church. And we have an officer with a lot of architectural experience who will guide you through what might be possible and what would probably not be acceptable to that committee. You could also give me a call and say, does this sound like it's got a chance of finding funding? And I'll have a quick look for you and give you an idea. To do that, I need to know roughly what it's going to cost, to the nearest £10,000 say, and I need to know what your proposal involves. So once you've got an idea that it could have legs, this project that you've got in mind, then you need to start talking to people. You need to start talking to the PCC. Do they feel that God is calling this project into being as well? Are they concerned about anything? Are they excited about it? How does it feel? Be prepared for this to take some time, particularly if people are very affectionate about their building as it is now. Talk to other church groups. You want to make sure that if you're going to spend money doing a project, that it will suit everyone who uses the building. Mothers Union, choir, Sunday school, messy church, the modern band, anyone who's involved in using the building. Then you need to develop what we call a case for support. A case for support is your statement of why you're doing what you're doing. And there should be 3 types of case for support: a full A4 page which puts your project into context, where your building is, what you want to do, why you want to do it. Then you should have that all summarised in 1 paragraph, and then if you possibly can, get it down to no more than 2 lines. And that will really focus you on what you're doing and why. This model needs to go round in a loop until you're ready to consult externally. Let's have a look at that now. Before we begin to talk about wider consultation, it's important you understand how vital this part of your project is. There are many funders who won't give any money unless you can prove that you've consulted widely. If we think about an onion, at the core is the PCC, the people who manage the church. Around that is a layer of congregation and then church groups such as Mothers Union, the choir, messy church and so on. And around that there's the local community. There then may be the wider community who would also have an interest in your project. There might be special interest groups such as tourists, people interested in heritage, people with a passion for music, art, drama, architecture, who may also have an interest in your project. So make sure that your project hits as many of these groups as you can, because then you'll have a better chance of achieving the funding that you need. Now let's talk about wider consultation. How do we do that? If you have events planned in your parish, then see if you can get a table or a stall to talk about your project. The more fun you can make that, the better, because the more people you'll attract. I've worked with groups that have used polling stations. Their building was a polling station and they got permission to have questionnaires filled in after people had made their vote. Another parish has something called a prom day, where they have a sort of fair on the prom by the sea, and they sold cakes, and everyone who bought a cake was asked to fill in a questionnaire. You might have a country show, you might have a pancake race, anywhere where you can tell people what you're trying to do and ask their opinion. And the quickest way to do that is with a little ticked questionnaire. In the use of your own building, you have people coming through all the time. Have questionnaires at the back for visitors, put them by the visitors book, and then they won't be missed, with a little box so people can post them when they've completed them. I would put one on every seat for all your Christmas services, Easter services, school services, and so on. If you're a rural community and you have a village shop or a garage, make sure you can get your questionnaires in there. Make sure people understand what it is you're trying to do and why. You might have a parish magazine. It would be a good idea to put something in there. You might want to design a leaflet showing what it looks like now and what it might look like when you finish the project. And if you do that, ask people to fill in a questionnaire on the back page and give you some contact details, because if they care enough to fill in the questionnaire, they will also hopefully respond to further correspondence. If you're the kind of parish that has a web page, make sure you've got stuff on there, and if you have a Facebook page or a Twitter account, use that as well. In short, you want to be sure that as many people as possible in your community understand what you're doing and why you're doing it and the benefits. Not everyone may like what you're doing, but at least if they understand it, you have a better chance of keeping them on side. I'd just like to go through some of the jargon that you might meet on the journey towards your project. The first word is the funder. The funder has resource, money, time, expertise, and understands some of the needs of the beneficiary, the people who need some help. The problem for the funder is they don't know how to find the beneficiary. The fundraiser in the middle, that's hopefully you know these beneficiaries, you've seen the need and you want to respond to it, but you don't have the resources. So you are the link between the people who have a need and the funders who exist to help with that need. So never feel that what you're doing is begging. What you are actually doing is helping these people and helping these people by being the link that makes them both feel better about what they do. So, you've had your idea, you've consulted both within the church and within the community, you've really honed down your case for support so that you're absolutely clear about what you're going to do and why you're going to do it, and you can prove that you've done all that work. Now it's time to identify who might fund your project. I think that funders fall into 4 broad categories. Let's look at them one by one. I've called the first box sure things, but of course the reality is there is no such thing as a sure thing. But into this box I'd put the diocese and the representative body of the Church in Wales. They don't have huge amounts to give to your project, but if you can't convince them to give a small amount, it might worry other funders who may consider that your denomination doesn't support the project as it stands. Then, having secured something from the sure things, you move on to catching a big fish. These are the big funders who will have a considerable input into your project. It might be Heritage Lottery, Big Lottery, it might be CADU, it might be the Welsh Government. If you land a big fish, then it's much more likely that your project will come to fruition. Once you've landed these, the cautious investors may be ready to get on board. These are people like National Churches Trust, who require you to have at least 50% of the funding in place before they will consider your project. All Churches Trust, I think, is also quite cautious, and there are several others. Then we come to the finishers. These are mainly private trusts who don't have a huge amount to give away, but who like to be able to come in at the end and make your project happen. So they're really important in helping you get to that final funding total. Examples of all these funders are on the diocesan webpage under grants. Now we're going to have a look at the roles that people need to take on to bring a project to fruition. For a project to be successful, there needs to be one person who takes on the role of project manager. This might be the clergy or the church warden, or it might be somebody in the congregation who has experience of managing a project. But this person keeps track of what's going on all around the project. They'll work with the architect, and the architect will work with the faculty writer. This is the person who submits the faculty to the DAC, usually a church warden, as they have responsibility for the church fabric. There may be a consultation group. If you're doing complex community consultation, you might want to delegate the responsibility for designing the leaflet, making sure the stalls are out on the events day, making sure before the carol service that there's a questionnaire on every seat. You might want to commission a fundraising team. This is a group who will run events to raise money towards the project. Most funders will expect to see around 10% coming from the congregation, so they've got a big job to do. The most successful fundraising team I worked with was a team of 3 ladies who got together. They didn't know each other. They decided to do 3 major fundraising events a year and asked the members of the congregation to do something in the months where there was no major event, and they had a good time and raised a lot of money. The bid writer is the person I will work most closely with. This is the person who fills in the application forms. If you're going to take on that role, you need to be computer literate and you need to have access to a computer. Underpinning all this work needs to be the rest of the congregation in deep and committed prayer about the project. I wish you well with your project, whatever it is. If you need any help, do get in touch. Contact the diocesan office and you can get help with faculties, bid writing and fundraising.